Over more than 190 kilometers, a stretch of blue cuts through the Egyptian desert. This is the Suez Canal, one of the greatest technical feats of all time. By separating Africa and Asia, this man-made route has transformed the world forever. Since its creation in the 19th century, it allows ships to pass directly from the Mediterranean Ocean through to the Red Sea. This is a considerable shortcut as they no longer have to go around Africa. 18,000 ships take this route each year. They return on one of the busiest waterways in the world. Approximately 700 million tons of merchandise pass through here. These ships have become giants of the sea, weighing up to 240,000 tons and measuring up to 400 meters long. We will explain how the Suez Canal has evolved to meet the needs of the merchant navy.
Suez, qui est une infrastructure du 19e, doit s'adapter à ces flottes totalement inimaginables, même pour Jules Verne au 19e siècle.
These ships are so large that the canal has become too narrow, stopping the boats from passing one another. In 2014, a giant project is launched. A new 72-kilometer route rises from the sands, effectively creating a two-way navigation system.
Nous étions en charge d'un projet colossal, d'un projet pharaonique.
In less than a year, 500 million cubic meters of sand are removed from the site. This feat was carried out by an army of bulldozers and giant dredgers from all around the world. Using never-before-seen 3D images, we will discover how the vacuum cleaners of the sea really work. These machines are at the cutting edge of technology. Because of them, the canal is now 24 meters deep, compared to its original 8 meters. However, the technical means available in the 19th century are very different. Drilling into the isthmus of the Suez thus becomes an extreme challenge. In 1859, when Ferdinand de Lesseps launches this extraordinary project, the region is a complete no man's land. Everything must be transported to the site: materials, fresh water and a workforce.
Suez représente quelque chose de tout à fait exceptionnel qui va marquer une étape fondamentale dans l'histoire des travaux publics.
The construction site experiences numerous crises and costs the lives of thousands of men. But under the momentum of the Industrial Revolution, everything changes. We will learn more about the machines that had to be invented in order to complete this astounding task.
Ces machines du 19e siècle ont permis de mettre en œuvre un chantier hors norme et donc de construire une véritable mégastructure qui est encore utilisée aujourd'hui.
But when surging sands threaten its very existence, the canal must undergo constant maintenance. This proves a real challenge for this one-of-a-kind superstructure. Spanning from the initial works up to the present day, we go behind the scenes of the construction of the Suez Canal. In 2014, a construction site is set up in the middle of the Egyptian desert. This is the building site for the extension of the Suez Canal. The job is clearly immense. They need to dig a second waterway equal in volume to more than 200 large Cheops pyramids. A crazy yet ultimately successful gamble. The new Suez Canal is inaugurated with a great fanfare on the 6th of August 2015. It is an immense source of pride for the Egyptian authorities. Bigger, deeper, cleaner, the canal has been completely transformed. These images make their way around the world. Dozens of foreign politicians come to be a part of the occasion. The waterway represents a strategic focus for world maritime trade. The program for the ceremony includes official speeches, a military parade, and an aerial display. Pierre Cateau recalls that day. He was the site manager for a dredging company.
À cette occasion, nous avons pu voir deux navires se croiser juste devant la tribune officielle pour la première fois dans le canal de Suez.
Two ships passing side by side in the Suez Canal constitutes a revolutionary moment in the history of this megastructure. In the past, the waterway was too narrow for two ships to directly pass one another. This forced them to circulate in a different way. Now, thanks to this new 72-kilometre route, a two-way navigation system is possible over this entire stretch.
Un petit peu comme si vous aviez une route nationale et vous créiez une seconde voie pour créer une autoroute.
This second waterway gets rid of the alternate convoy system over a section of the Suez Canal. The transit duration for the ships shifts from 18 hours to 11 hours, and the waiting time is reduced from 11 hours to 3 hours. This is a considerable shortcut, ultimately allowing the maximum traffic capacity on the canal to double in size. By 2030, nearly 100 ships could take this route every day, but in order to reach this goal, an enormous amount of work is required. The construction site is divided into two sections. On one side, the creation of a new 35-kilometre waterway running parallel to the original canal. On the other side, the extension and deepening of the historic waterway over 37 kilometres by the Great Bitter Lake. The Egyptian army works on the first half of the construction site. They tackle enormous amounts of demolition work over an area situated 24 metres above sea level. Their mission, level off the landform to prepare the site for the imminent deepening work for the new canal. An array of bulldozers, scrappers, trucks and skips cleared 250 million cubic metres of sand, earth and rocks. The area is then flooded so that the dredgers are able to float. The same quantity of sand still needs to be removed, but this time from under the water. Machines at the forefront of technology, such as the cutter suction dredger, are enlisted for the task. To dig the canal, a different type of machine is used. The cutter suction dredge. With the help of an enormous pipe that reaches to the bottom of the canal, this machine can extract materials all while moving forward. At its head, there is a large suction device. The proportions of these floating giants are huge. They can measure over 200 meters long, the length of 2 football fields. The technology on board allows the dredgers to remove the materials through floating pipes. However, the quantities on this construction site are unprecedented. Thousands of cubic meters of sand run through the pipes and are then poured out several kilometers away in large storage areas in the middle of the Sinai Desert. In 2014, the Suez authorities appealed to 2 sets of dredging companies. The first is in charge of increasing the depth of the canal to 24 meters. The second must extend the existing waterway, all while respecting the same depth. A particular constraint challenges this section of the work. The task must be completed without interrupting the general navigation. The company for which Pierre Cateau works participated in the dredging of the second zone.
Nous étions en charge d'un projet colossal, d'un projet pharaonique qui comprenait en fait un challenge extrêmement important sur le plan logistique, sur le point de vue organisationnel.
The head of the Suez Canal Authority had originally asked for a 5-year period to successfully carry out this incredible task. Nevertheless, he would only be given a year in which to do it. The time constraint would constitute a significant challenge for this record-breaking construction site. The next obstacle, the transportation of the materials and the personnel.
En l'espace de quelques mois, un nombre énorme de dragues a été mobilisé du monde entier. On parle d'environ 40 dragues. En complément de ce matériel principal, un très grand nombre de remorqueurs, de vedettes, de conduites, de pontons ont été mobilisés sur le projet. Le personnel qui est employé sur ce genre de chantier vient de 4 coins de la planète. Nous avions sur notre chantier 28 nationalités.
To afford this extension, the country must spend more than €7 billion. The authorities thus rely on a national momentum and appeal for donations. The strategy is successful as 80% of the project would be financed by the Egyptian population, all in just a few days. The work on the new Suez Canal is added to a long series of construction sites on the waterway that have been underway since its creation in the 19th century. The construction history of this megastructure dates back more than a century and a half. When the first engineers arrive at the Isthmus of the Suez, they discover a suitable environment for the implementation of a canal, despite its location in a completely isolated region. The Sinai, measuring 60,000 square kilometers, is one of the driest deserts in the world. However, nothing can shake the determination of the canal explorers. The official start of construction to connect the two seas is set for the 25th of April, 1859. But the workers are in for a hellish experience. Thierry Chambol has supervised numerous maritime works throughout his career. As an engineer, he describes the working conditions of the time.
Il travaille avec de l'eau jusqu'aux cuisses. Avec un petit outil, il décroche des mottes de terre du fond et il les passe aux voisins, qui les passent aux voisins, ils font une chaîne. Et ils vont quand même réaliser 400 000 mètres cubes de déblais grâce à cette technique. Et on sent bien que ça n'est pas une technique qui pourra être prolongée longtemps.
The site is in desperate need of a greater workforce. The project is in danger. But where could they find more workers willing to dig the canal? The Egyptian authorities propose to reinstate the forced labour scheme. Caroline Piquet is a senior lecturer at the Sorbonne. She wrote a reference work on the history of the Suez Canal.
La corvée est un système utilisé par les vice-rois en Égypte pour entretenir les canaux. Donc plusieurs paysans égyptiens, ce qu'on appelle les fellahs, sont mis à contribution pour cet entretien.
Nearly 400,000 labourers from all over Egypt are forced to dig the canal in extreme conditions. The construction site would cost the lives of thousands of them. The isolation of the site, situated in the desert far from any supplies and equipment, quickly proves to be a problem. Groups of people are forced to deliver everything to the site. Some of the materials, such as wood or large rocks, are entirely missing from the area.
Le transport du matériel est une autre grande préoccupation, puisqu'il faut faire venir ce matériel d'Europe. Il est ensuite débarqué à Alexandrie, mais ensuite il faut l'acheminer jusque dans l'isthme par chameau et puis par canot. Donc c'est extrêmement long, c'est coûteux.
In need of a solution to facilitate the transportation of the materials, the managers of the construction site decide to build a small supply canal. At 50 meters long and 2 meters deep, the supply canal is a reduced scale model of the final canal. The workers first carry out the digging in dry conditions. Once they reach a certain depth, water is poured in so that the dredgers can float while extending and deepening the waterway. The excavated material is used to fill in the banks. "78 dredgers are built specifically for the Suez Canal construction site. This particular machine is characterized by a central well that allows a bucket chain to descend down to its main body. The lowest bucket strikes the bottom, fills up, and then ascends to pour its contents into the barges. The bucket dredger is at the origin of a series of dredging machines. Like the backhoe dipper excavator. This powerful machine was used on the construction site of the new Suez Canal. Its 3 enormous stakes are used to stabilize the pontoon so that the excavator can stand on top. The shovel digs into the canal bed and unloads the excavated material into a barge moored next to the dredger. It can work on any type of soil. This engine corresponds perfectly with the type of rocks in the region, essentially sand and clay. Since the drilling work for the canal started in 1859, the engineers have been asking themselves, how will these soils react when they are put underwater? We go to a state-of-the-art laboratory at the École des Ponts Paris-Tech. Here we meet Dr. Gabezlou, a specialist in geotechnical engineering. Initially, the project sought to establish an embankment with an incline of 26 degrees. Nevertheless, due to the instability of the soil when placed underwater, their original plans would be turned upside down.
Dans le projet du canal de Suez, les pentes se sont adoucies naturellement en présence de l'eau.
On this reduced scale model of the Suez Canal, the specialist reproduces the same slopes as those originally imagined by the engineers at the time.
On crée de plus en plus de zones instables en contact avec de l'eau. Et la pente va chercher un nouvel état d'équilibre avec une pente plus douce.
Once the canal fills with water, the embankment gradient softens. Some walls even collapse. Consequently, the basin fills with sand.
Et c'est ce qu'on observe également ici. On est en train de réduire la profondeur du canal.
In the 19th century, the engineers decide to let their banks slope naturally. However, this means that they need to dig even deeper in order to reach the appropriate depth. During construction, traffic on the future canal is intense. Convoys of barges towed by men and animals are used to transport the materials. The installation of an additional supply canal quickly begins. Most importantly, this will allow fresh water to be delivered to the construction site. This is a rare product in the desert region, but it is indispensable for such work. Thanks to the canal, water from the Nile is transported to the isthmus from Zagazig to Ismailia, joining onto the Suez thereafter. The fresh water only arrives later to Port Said, first through canalization and then through an extension of the waterway. The freshwater canal follows the trace of a much older waterway. Since the dawn of time, men have been trying to cross the Egyptian desert by boat.
Ce percement n'est pas une idée nouvelle, puisque au temps des pharaons, il existait déjà un canal de caractéristiques beaucoup plus limitées qui réunissait le delta du Nil à la mer Rouge. Puis ce canal a été oublié, il n'en restait que des vestiges.
For centuries, the world's seaborne trade has been using an entirely different route. The solution in connecting Europe and Asia lies in travelling to Egypt to unload the cargo. The transport then continues on land. However, this is not the end. When the groups reach the Red Sea, the goods are loaded onto a second ship for the rest of the trip. A real expedition. A new waterway would only be established by the Portuguese at the end of the 15th century. This new waterway would merge the oriental borders together, effectively bypassing Africa. This voyage lasts several months. Nearly 300 years later, a French emperor reinstates the idea of drilling into the isthmus of the Suez.
Il faut attendre néanmoins l'expédition de Bonaparte en 1798 pour que le projet véritablement fasse l'objet d'une étude scientifique.
Napoleon Bonaparte's engineers conclude that there are too many technical obstacles, so the project ultimately falls into oblivion. In the middle of the 19th century, one French diplomat decides to persevere with this crazy dream. His name is Ferdinand de Lesseps. For Arnaud Ramière de Fortanier, this man would change the face of the world.
Alors d'abord, Ferdinand de Lesseps, c'est un personnage énorme, j'allais dire presque monstrueux. C'est Jules Verne, c'est Eiffel, c'est Lesseps. Ce sont les grands travaux du 19e siècle. Et on imagine mal à notre époque le changement d'échelle qu'a représenté l'intervention de ces gens-là.
This extraordinary character would ultimately shape the drilling project of the Isthmus of the Suez. In 1854, Ferdinand de Lesseps gets the opportunity of a lifetime when his friend Mohammed Said Pasha comes into power. They got to know each other when the French diplomat was working in Egypt.
Il persuade Mohammed Said Pasha de lui confier la construction du canal. Et c'est là que tout commence.
Ferdinand de Lesseps gains the exclusive power to dig a canal between the two oceans. They would have the right to exploit it for 99 years. But on his construction site, the work doesn't seem to progress. After 2 years, the workers don't succeed in removing the required amounts of sand to finish the canal. They lack the necessary machinery.
Pour vous donner un ordre de grandeur, le canal de Suez, au moment de sa création, représentait 70 millions de mètres cubes de déblais. 70 millions de mètres cubes qui ont été réalisés en 10 ans.
On the construction site for the new canal, it took less than 2 months to remove the same amount of material. In a century and a half, the quality of the dredgers has evolved considerably. The incredible volume of material excavated in the most recent extension project is proof of this.
L'élargissement du canal de Suez a représenté 500 millions de mètres cubes, disons 250 millions de mètres cubes par dragage en l'espace de 10 mois. Donc en fait, on retrouve un facteur de plus de 100 entre, disons, la capacité d'excavation d'aujourd'hui et celle de l'époque.
But in order to reach the fixed excavation objectives, the construction site required the mobilization of 75% of the existing dredgers, which amounted to approximately 40 machines from all over the world.
Toutes ces dragues, bien entendu, travaillent 24 heures sur 24 et 7 jours sur 7, et de telle façon à effectuer les travaux dans le minimum de temps possible, compte tenu que la contrainte de temps était certainement extrêmement importante sur ce projet.
Nowadays, the best dredgers are fitted with hydraulic pumps that inject water in order to extract the sediments.
Les dragues aspiratrices actuelles sont des engins d'une puissance incroyable et qui peuvent aspirer en 1 heure 10 000 mètres cubes de sable en place, ce qui aurait nécessité à sec 10 000 ouvriers.
In his time, Ferdinand de Lesseps would have loved to work with such effective machines, even if they had only arrived on the Suez Canal after the 1930s. Nowadays, with unimaginable capacities, these machines have facilitated the deepening of the Suez Canal. The key feature of the cutter suction dredge is that it can move and work at the same time. This was an excellent advantage on the construction site of the new Suez Canal, where tasks sometimes had to be carried out without interrupting general navigation. To find out how this machine works, we climb aboard one of these floating giants. This ship works on maintaining the access channel at the port of Antwerp. Dennis Hennebert is its engineer.
En fait, la drague peut être comparée à un gros aspirateur flottant, un aspirateur des mers, des rivières. Et l'élinde sera le tuyau d'aspiration.
The dredge draghead is the large tube trailing across the length of the hull that links onto the pumping system. Here it measures around 50 meters. Its head resembles that of a giant steel monster.
Ça, c'est la crépine, la tête de dragage. C'est l'endroit par lequel les matériaux sont aspirés depuis le fond. Donc, on a plusieurs éléments. On voit que cette crépine est équipée de genres de dents. C'est ce qui permet de racler le sol, de faire en sorte que les matériaux sont bien repoussés vers la crépine. Et l'aspiration, qui est créée par la pompe, est à ce niveau-ci de 10 000 mètres cubes heure. Donc cette capacité d'aspiration mélangée avec l'impact des dents qui grattent le sol et également des injections d'eau qui nous permettent de mettre en suspension ces matériaux font que nous avons une quantité impressionnante de matériaux qui est directement envoyée vers le puits la drague par la pompe.
The filter works with the help of a water injection system. It has a mobile head. This way, it can adapt to fit the incline of the dredging area. The first water injection sets the materials in motion. Then, with assistance from the teeth, a second injection totally decomposes the sediments. The command post for the dredge draghead is located in the control tower. The main technician works with several screens. These allow him to get an overall view of the depth of the zone, the performance of the device, as well as an indication of the amount it has dredged. Be it mud, sand or stones, the collected sediments are all stocked on board, in the centre of the vessel. The largest reservoirs can reach a colossal capacity of up to 45,000 cubic meters, the equivalent to 12 Olympic swimming pools. Once the well is full, the dredge draghead is pulled up and the ship moves to the excavation area.
Alors, nous avons ici un puits d'une capacité de 5000 m3, un peu plus. Et entre le moment où il est plein et le moment où il est complètement vidé, on a une dizaine de minutes.
The shutters situated at the bottom of the hold help to unload the excavated material into the clearing zone. This technique is known as piling.
Et les jets que vous voyez, c'est de l'eau qu'on repompe, de l'eau propre qui nous permet de rincer le puits, qui permet de s'assurer que tous les sédiments sont bien évacués à l'endroit approprié.
An alternative clearing system consists in forcing the material through a pipe. The excavated material can then be transported several kilometers away through the means of either a floating or underground piping system. These two methods were used on the new Suez Canal construction site. A large piling zone was set up to the west of the Great Bitter Lake. The materials were removed via the piping system and unloaded into large hollow areas in the heart of the Sinai Desert. The final method employed for removing dredged materials is known as rainbowing. This is normally used for beach nourishment. In the 19th century, the excavation of rubble from what will be the future canal is a big problem. In 1864, before the influx of machines, the construction site confronts a serious crisis. The forced labour scheme, authorising the use of Egyptian peasants for the work, is abolished. At this time, the Industrial Revolution in Europe is in full swing. The engineers thus try to invent new machines to keep the construction site going. Lavallee Industries develop long gangways to unload the excavated material directly from the dredgers. This had never been done before. The dredger scoops mud up from the bottom of the water in what will be the future canal. It then unloads the excavated material into a gutter that can measure up to 70 meters long. A pump sends jets of water to dissolve the extracted matter and pushes it towards the exit. A horizontal hinge, situated at the junction of the dredger, helps to modify the incline of the gangway. A metallic trellis that rests on an iron barge assures the machine's stability. This innovation changes the construction site for good. The canal progresses at an astounding speed, but in the areas where the banks are more highly elevated, the dredger with the long gangway is destabilized. Several accidents are accounted for. An alternative machine is developed. This engine, known as the lift, permits the excavation of the materials directly from the barge. We have a meeting with Lionel Dufault. He is the collections manager at the Museum of Arts and Trades.
Le dénominateur à toutes ces machines, c'est l'emploi de la machine à vapeur. La machine à vapeur, on la connaît depuis la fin du XVIIIe siècle. Elle était plutôt destinée au départ à l'exore, c'est-à-dire au pompage des eaux d'infiltration dans les mines. Et à la fin du XVIIIe siècle, on va modifier la machine à vapeur pour en faire finalement une machine qui fournisse de la force motrice pour animer d'autres machines.
Consequently, the steam engine shifts to the railway, in locomotives and onto water on board ships. It is also used in workshops or construction sites for public works as a means to support the other machines.
La locomobile est donc une machine à vapeur mobile. On la déplace et on l'installe là où on en a besoin. Elle comprend une chaudière qu'on voit ici, qu'on devine dans le corps principal. Une chaudière qu'on alimente avec du combustible, généralement du charbon ou de la houille. Et cette machine à vapeur va permettre de fournir une force sous pression qui va être utilisée pour faire bouger ce volant auquel on va relier une courroie qui elle-même va animer d'autres machines. Sur le chantier de Suez, les locomobiles étaient utilisées pour animer des grues ou des pompes, par exemple.
The locomobiles are also used to operate pumps for the long gangways. The dredgers, on the other hand, use their own steam engine. In Europe, a real enthusiasm is generated around the technical revolutions established on the construction site.
Le canal de Suez a été présenté à l'exposition universelle de Paris en 1867. Il fait l'objet d'une véritable fierté parmi les ingénieurs français, parmi les diplomates, parmi aussi les armateurs, les chambres de commerce.
The Suez Canal Company holds several conferences in front of a giant model of the project that is exhibited during the event. Along with this technical revolution, a series of innovations in all domains soon follows. Notably, in Port Said, the engineers face a typically insurmountable problem. There aren't enough stone quarries in the region to build the harbour jetties. One entrepreneur suggests that they build artificial blocks with a base made of sand and lime. 30,000 blocks are made. Another building site develops within the Suez Canal construction site.
Alors l'entreprise du Sceau va réaliser un chantier extraordinaire de construction des blocs de 20 tonnes et va créer une véritable usine de fabrication des blocs. Il y en a des milliers et des milliers qui vont sécher pendant environ un mois et qu'on va ensuite conduire en mer en les chargeant avec une énorme grue sur des chalands. On les amène à l'emplacement voulu pour constituer la digue.
This would be the first manufacturing site for artificial blocks in history. The fabrication of the blocks would still require years of further development, and the blocks used for the jetties would need to be replaced on a regular basis. Another section of the construction site is deemed problematic for the work required in the elevated areas of the site.
L'évacuation des déblais du fond de la fouille jusqu'au relief naturel pose un problème difficile. D'abord, il faut un effort considérable pour tirer les wagons sur la ligne de plus grande pente. Ensuite, le raccordement au niveau du relief naturel est évidemment difficile, il y a une sorte de cassure.
A ramp system is established along the length of the slope. At the bottom of the cavity, the workers dig the future canal. The excavated materials are loaded into small carts and connected to a railway track. Towed by steam winches, they ascend the slope in order to reach the disposal site. Another challenge for both the past construction site and the latest one is the difficult management of the rocky banks. To solve this problem, there is a machine that has been specially adapted to work on this type of land. It is known as the cutter suction dredger. This giant of the sea can measure up to 150 meters long and 30 meters wide. The dredger gets into position and fixes itself into the ground by using its large stakes. It then moves around this axis with the help of its lateral winches linked to giant anchors. The cutter head is at the front of the vessel. This enormous drill can reach up to 3 meters in diameter. Its mission: destroy the rocks, even the hardest one, under the water and on the banks. This giant engine is controlled from a steering cabin equipped with the latest technology. Dredgers, such as the IBN Batuta, are capable of positioning themselves with incredible precision in order to carry out their demolition work. The amount of rubble produced is truly phenomenal. Rocks, sand, mud, clay, all of the materials are sucked up through hydraulic pumps and then pushed back into the floating pipes and tubes laid out on the shore. When it is possible to unload the excavated material into an underwater zone, the pipe connected to the cutter head is tied to a raft equipped with a continuous spreading system. As an alternative option, the excavated materials are unloaded onto barges that are moored to the dredger. Once they reach the disposal site, the hull splits in two in order to get rid of the cargo. In total, 25 cutter suction dredgers were utilised on the construction site for the new Suez Canal. This had never been seen before.
L'une des premières dragues que nous avons mobilisées sur ce projet est la drague d'Artagnan, qui bat pavillon français. Elle a été mobilisée depuis un chantier qui se passait en Russie, dans la péninsule de Yamal.
With a horsepower of 38,000, it is one of the most powerful dredgers in the world. During the 19th century, the workers also face several rocky obstacles while developing the future canal. Destroying the rocks requires Herculean strength. A new machine thus piques the interest of the Suez Company to help them overcome this difficult area.
Et donc on va utiliser l'excavateur de couvreux, qui est une machine capable d'extraire la roche à sec dans des zones qui n'ont pas encore été inondées.
Nicknamed the steam shovel, nearly 16 Couvreau excavators are built especially for the Suez construction site. The excavator moves on rails positioned along the future canal and gradually widens it. In the space of 3 years, it assists in the removal of 9 million cubic meters of land, a record. Its specially formed buckets allow it to extract a significant amount of rock before ascending back up to the excavator. The extracted matter is taken away in small carts. Once they are all loaded, a locomotive takes them to the disposal site. Little by little, the railway line becomes a normal part of the construction site. It helps not only with the transportation of the material, but with the transportation of the staff as well. These temporary railway lines are constructed and deconstructed as is necessary for excavation. But even the Couvreau excavator does not always succeed in destroying the rocks. In 1869, 2 months before the inauguration of the Suez Canal, rocky banks are discovered in the waterway at a depth of 4 meters, when in reality the canal should be 8 meters deep.
Donc il y a une pression sur les ingénieurs et sur les ouvriers qui est extraordinaire. Et ce déroquetage sous-marin, on ne sait pas très bien faire. Donc on va immerger des bouteilles de 4 à 5 litres de poudre réunies par un tuyau en caoutchouc qui contient le cordon qu'on va allumer à la surface pour faire éclater ces bouteilles à la surface du banc rocheux.
The aim is to create a sufficient passageway for the ships of the time in terms of the submerged portion of the vessel. This is what is known as the draft. The passage is completed in the final weeks of the construction site.
Le Péluse, qui est le bateau de la Compagnie des Messageries Impériales, fait 5 mètres de tirant d'eau. Il passe juste. Certains bateaux talonnent le jour de l'inauguration. Pour d'autres, on a déplacé la charge du bateau de l'arrière vers l'avant pour que leur tirant d'eau à l'arrière soit un peu moins fort. Mais on se rend compte de la pression extraordinaire qui existe. Alors on donne des primes aux ouvriers, on fort de nuit. Enfin, c'est un chantier incroyable qui se met en place pour arriver au résultat recherché.
After 10 years of labor, the Suez Canal finally becomes a reality. The Red Sea and the Mediterranean Ocean join together. The waterway measures 164 kilometers in total. The route now joins the main cities of the isthmus together: Port Said on the Mediterranean Ocean, Ismailia in the middle, and finally Suez at the mouth of the Gulf by the Red Sea. On the 17th of November 1869, the Suez Canal is inaugurated. It is an international event. Ferdinand de Lesseps has made the Pharaoh's dream a reality. Open to all nations, the Suez Canal changes the world seaborne trade forever. From this point onwards, the journey between Europe and the Indies is cut in half. To get from Marseille to Bombay, the original distance around Africa was more than 19,000 kilometers. With the Suez Canal, it amounts to almost 8,000 kilometers. This is a considerable shortcut. Originally, 2 to 3 months of navigation via the Cape of Good Hope would have been the norm when traveling between these two ports. By passing through the isthmus, the journey is reduced to a single month. At the beginning of the 20th century, the Suez Canal Company acquires an industrial site, the general workshops situated in Port Fouad. The naval construction site is thus at the height of technology. The workshops fabricate the company equipment. More than 1,000 individuals work there. Nevertheless, during its first years of operation, the canal maintenance service faces an unexpected hitch. The backflow created by the passing of the ships damages the embankments.
Alors, plusieurs méthodes sont utilisées. Des méthodes de péré, d'enrochement. On utilise notamment des roches, des carrières d'Ataka à proximité de Suez. On utilise des revêtements maçonnés. Les résultats ne sont jamais très satisfaisants. Les berges s'effondrent régulièrement et la compagnie doit faire appel à des études plus scientifiques d'experts de laboratoires hydrauliques en France.
Situated close to Grenoble, this hydraulic laboratory is still operating today. Luc Am is the Maritime Technical Director. Here they study all sorts of water-related developments on smaller scale models. When the Suez Canal Company contacts them in the middle of the 20th century, the waterway is in bad shape.
Environ 120 km de berges étaient dégradés sérieusement et à l'époque, les estimations au début des années 50 étaient d'environ d'1 milliard de francs par an de coûts de réparation de ces dégradations.
The laboratory recreates a section of the Suez Canal. A smaller scale model of the vessel is first towed through and later self-propelled.
Il faut imaginer que ces bateaux remplissaient les 2/3 du canal pour les plus gros. Et donc, il n'y avait plus beaucoup d'eau. Et donc, il y avait une résistance à l'avancement. Les navires n'arrivaient pas à obtenir la bonne vitesse. Ça créait des courants extrêmement forts de plusieurs mètres par seconde.
The studies focus on trying to understand this resistance so as to modify the shape of the hulls in the ships. The research proves so innovative that it quickly captures the attention of various oil companies. The models improve. The final result, the ships move with greater ease through the water and the traffic of the canal is optimized. In spite of all these efforts to maintain the waterway, further extension work quickly becomes inevitable. The Suez Canal must continuously adapt to the ever-evolving shapes of new ships. We find out more at the National Navy Museum.
La taille des navires explose après la Deuxième Guerre mondiale dans une course au gigantisme que pour l'instant rien n'a arrêté. On construit à une taille qu'on pense raisonnable par rapport à un état de la flotte, mais on est déjà en retard par rapport aux structures, aux bateaux qui sont en train d'être construits. Évidemment, Suez, qui est une infrastructure du 19e, à la fois est une méga structure, mais qui doit s'adapter à ces flottes totalement inimaginables, même pour Jules Verne au 19e siècle.
In 1950, 40,000-ton ships are outdated. Their proportions are nothing in comparison to the other vessels of the time, such as the Pelouse. With its 2,000 tons, the ship owned by the Imperial Maritime Shipping Company is one of the first to have travelled on the Suez Canal. The waterway also has to make it through the 20th century, with all of its conflict. On the 26th of July 1956, Colonel Nasser gives a momentous speech in front of a crowd of Egyptians. He announces the nationalisation of the Suez Canal. The Western powers react to this. The United Kingdom, France and Israel launch a military operation that ultimately ends in failure. However, navigation on the canal is stopped for almost 5 months. The canal deteriorates. With the help of the UN, Egypt repairs and modernises the canal. With its depth increased to 14 metres, the waterway can now handle ships with an 11-metre draft. In 1967, a new crisis shakes the region, the Six-Day War. Along with other Arab countries, Egypt battles against Israel. The Suez Canal turns into a war zone. Sunken ships and mines obstruct the navigation. The basin fills with sand and the embankments collapse. The waterway is closed down.
La fermeture du canal de Suez après la guerre des 6 jours est une véritable catastrophe puisque le canal de Suez ne sera pas entretenu pendant 8 années et lorsqu'il est réouvert en 1975, il n'est plus adapté à la marine pétrolière. Avant la guerre, il accueillait à peu près 80% de cette marine marchande. Après la guerre, on tombe à 1/3. Donc c'est une perte de clients énorme. La plupart des armateurs ont repris le chemin du contournement de l'Afrique et de manière à rentabiliser les parcours, on construit des bateaux qui dépassent les 200 000 tonnes. Donc ils ne sont absolument plus adaptés au canal de Suez.
The Egyptian authorities must act. So, with the help of the international community, they launch a rehabilitation and modernization program for the canal. Thereafter, the canal doubles in size at 4 separate points to allow the ships to pass one another. Port Said and Cabret, both of which have been part of the site since 1955, join onto the Bala bypass. Ultimately, a new bypass at the Great Bitter Lake spans over a 5-kilometre distance. Similarly to motorway junctions, these bypasses allow the ships to travel in both directions. Thanks to these new dimensions, the canal can withstand ships weighing up to 150,000 tons. These ships have turned into giants of the sea that need to be controlled. At Port Revel Ship Handling Centre in Isère, pilots and captains learn how to manoeuvre the ships with the help of small-scale models. These mini-liners, container ships, ferries and tankers, all about a dozen meters long, can hold up to 2 people. On this 5-hectare lake, all sorts of maritime infrastructures have been recreated, including a section of the Suez Canal. Jean-Paul Jean-Jean is an instructor. This morning, he is training 2 interns to attempt the bypass on the Suez Canal. This maneuver is normally forbidden. Here, potential errors can be pushed beyond the security limits. It is a good way to test the ship's reactions.
Sur les canaux en général, quand il n'y a pas suffisamment de place ou quand les bateaux s'approchent trop près l'un de l'autre, ils prennent un risque. Il y a des forces qui se développent et qui font que les bateaux sont ou attirés ou repoussés. Et si c'est dans un canal, c'est plus étroit, ça peut donner des embardées, enfin des changements de direction involontaires que le capitaine ou le pilote ne peuvent pas prévoir et donc c'est dangereux. Les 2 bateaux sont parallèles, les 2 arrières sont proches, très proches. Et là, le risque, c'est que le Grenoble va s'échouer.
This is a tenfold hazard as maritime infrastructures are often overcrowded. But how can you maneuver ships that are continuously increasing in speed and size yet lack in power?
Alors, les problèmes classiques des gros navires dans les canaux, dus à l'inertie des navires, ils sont de plus en plus difficiles à manœuvrer. Et ça veut dire qu'il faut anticiper toutes leurs réactions. Et pour anticiper leurs réactions, il faut les connaître et connaître les réactions du profil du canal, par exemple, ou des ports dans lesquels ils se rendent.
Captains and pilots are now learning how to maneuver giant ships on the Suez Canal that can weigh up to 240,000 tons. After the development of the 2-way navigation system, the draft limit is increased to more than 20 meters. The canal is even at the origin of the measurement unit, known as the Suez Max. This unit determines the maximum dimensions possible for a ship to be able to pass through the megastructure. This is a constraint for certain ship owners. Eric Banel is their representative in France.
Il est très difficile d'imaginer un navire qui ne puisse pas traverser le canal de Suez. Et la taille maximum des navires pour le canal de Suez, c'est la taille maximum pour une grande partie de la flotte maritime mondiale. C'est pour ça qu'on appelle ces navires des Suez Max.
One of the main objectives of the extension work was to adapt the waterway to match the new dimensions of the merchant navy. However, this risked the disqualification of the canal. Even now, it is still one of the most used waterways in the world.
Aujourd'hui, nous avons à peu près une 50aine de navires par jour sur le canal de Suez. L'objectif affiché avec le doublement du canal par les autorités égyptiennes est une centaine de navires.
The Suez Canal constitutes a strategic passageway for maritime carriers. The waterway drains out almost 8% of global traffic. It also represents an enormous economic stake for the Egyptian authorities.
Aujourd'hui, ce coût de passage du canal représente à peu près 800 000 $ pour un porte-conteneurs de 18 000 conteneurs. Cette source de revenus, aujourd'hui, on l'estime donc à plusieurs centaines de millions pour l'État égyptien. C'est la 3e source de revenus du budget égyptien aujourd'hui.
Egypt thus has every interest to keep investing in its megastructure. Back at the Suez Canal, we climb on board a container ship.
Boat alongside.
Yeah, boat alongside.
Max is the captain.
We are at the moment proceeding northbound in the Suez Canal.
Here, the navigation laws are strict. Direction and speed must be constantly controlled in order to avoid crashing into another ship.
Yeah, it's going smooth. No problems here. Slow ahead. Okay.
A pilot from the Suez Canal Authority advises the captain on which maneuvers to pursue. This is a compulsory measure.
It's quite important to navigate correctly here in the canal because, as you can see, there's not much room on each side of the vessel.
This is no ordinary day for the captain and his crew. This is the first time they are passing through the new Suez Canal.
I've been here approximately 40 times, but today is special that we will be turning to starboard into the new canal instead of turning the port into the old one.
It is a special moment in the captain's career.
Yeah, of course, it's special every time when you do something first time, and it will also be special now when we get to the approach to the new channel.
Little by little, the landscape changes.
Now it's quite amazing how much sand they really have digged out of this canal. We have mountains both sides now. It's incredible.
The Suez Canal, the gem of the industrial world, continues to blow us away with its innovations. Now, as a two-way navigation system, the megastructure must overcome another challenge, namely how to cross it. The new Suez Canal has rendered certain infrastructures obsolete, such as the El Ferdan railway bridge. At 340 meters, it was the longest swing bridge in the world. Now it no longer serves any purpose. To cross over the dual waterway and make the Sinai region more accessible, several infrastructures will take shape. A notable addition to the program, the construction of 2 motorway tunnels beneath the Suez Canal near Port Said. This is an entirely new challenge, as it involves drilling a double tube measuring nearly 4 kilometers long. A subsequent railway tunnel may even accompany this technical feat. Constantly changing in size, depth and modernity, the Suez Canal is in a state of perpetual transformation.